Hello everybody, I'm going to walk us through as quickly as we can a circle check on a bus, just so you get an idea of what it's like. Obviously, once you start your behind the wheel training, you're going to do this every day with your behind the wheel trainer until it's all second nature. So the first thing we're going to do is we walk up to the bus, have a quick look underneath of it, and make sure that we don't see anything on the ground underneath that might indicate that something is leaking from the engine. And then we're going to do a check of the engine compartment. We're going to unlatch the hood on both sides. And then standing in front of the bus and using the handle, we're going to open the hood and let it gently open up. Then we're going to look under the hood, and we're going to check everything. We're going to give it a good quick glance. One thing I like to say is a dirty engine is a good engine. If you see anything that is clean or shiny or glistening wet, that's a sign that something's going on and you might want to let the shop know. We'll check our air filter, make sure that it's still in the green there and it's good. We're going to check all our hoses and connections and everything. And I'm just doing a visual check to make sure that everything looks like it's in good shape. I'm going to look at my fan. I'm not going to touch it. Don't want to get in the habit of touching things that might cut our fingers off at some point. So I'm just going to look at it. The fan blades look like they're in good shape from here. And just kind of working my way back and forth, left to right, top to bottom. So as I go down, I'm looking at the frame of the bus here. I'm looking at the shock, that it's connected and it's in good shape. I'm looking at the leaf spring there. I want to see an upward curve. I like to call it a smile on our leaf springs. A smiling bus is a happy bus. We're going to look at all the connectors there, all the bolts and everything there in good shape. There's no sign of shiny metal. That would indicate that something is wearing unusually and we need to draw attention to that. I'm going to look at our brakes and make sure that they're solid. I'm going to check the cables and the connections, make sure that everything's in place and there's no sign of brake fluid leaking. I'm going to check my washer fluid reservoir, which on this bus is right here. Make sure I've got lots of washer fluid in case I need it. And I'm just going to check the inside of my tire as I'm looking down and making sure it doesn't have any bulges in it or there isn't any unusual wear or any metal sticking out of the tire that might indicate that the wires inside the rubber have been worn through. So once I've looked at all of that, I'm going to check for my cotter pins. Those are pins that hold the steering and suspension together. And on this bus, there's two on this side, and I can see them both, and they're both in good shape. That means nothing's going to fall apart while I'm driving. Then we're going to move around to the other side of the engine. I think we are. Just making sure I know where the oil filter or the oil dipstick is on this bus before I move on. So I'm going to come around to this side. Again, I'm going to look at everything, kind of work my way top to bottom, left to right, look at all my connections and clamps and hoses, and looking for anything that might be leaking or anything that might be rubbing against something that would indicate an issue. I'm going to check my brake fluid level. I can see through the container here that our brake fluid level is at a good level. We don't open that up. If there are any issues with our brake fluid level, we let the shop know, and they take care of that. I'm going to check my coolant fluid, which again, I can see very clearly here, and we have lots of coolant, so we're good that way. I can check my oil by pulling the oil dipstick and just making sure there's oil on the dipstick. If the engine is cold, there will be less oil on the dipstick, obviously, than a dipstick on a bus that's already been running for a while. We don't check under the hood when the buses are running. But if it had just been turned off, you'd check the oil, you'd have a higher level. Our transmission fluid, again, we'd only get an accurate reading if the bus was running, and we're not going to be under the hoods while the buses are running. That's for the shop to do. But I can see some nice pink transmission fluid on this dipstick. Lets me know that we have fluid in the reservoir, and that's all I need to know. I'm going to take a hand here, and this is why we wear gloves. I'm going to just turn our steering column a little bit, make sure that it's good and secure. It doesn't feel loose, so there's no sign that there's any problems with the steering. And actually I can see the steering wheel move when I do that. So I'm just going to glance up through the windshield to make sure the steering wheel is moving at the same time. That lets me know that everything is there and connected. And again, I'm gonna keep working my way down. This is my power steering reservoir. I can actually see the fluid level through the plastic, but if I couldn't, there's a little dipstick on top that you can check. I'm going to work my way down, looking at the frame, looking again at hoses and connectors, and making sure that there's no sign of anything leaking or disconnected. Our suspension on this side, steering and suspension, has 5 cotter pins that hold it all together. One there, 2 there, and 1 on the other side of the tire. I can see them all. I'm going to check my brake, make sure that it's connected and that there's no sign of leaking brake fluid anywhere. And I'm looking at the inside of my tire, again, making sure it's not bulging or showing any signs of unusual wear and tear. And then, just as gently as I opened it, I'm going to gently let the hood close back down again. And make sure that I connect those clamps. The last thing you want is an unconnected hood, that the clamp's not connected and you stop at a stop sign and the hood pops up. That's really embarrassing. So we're not going to do that. Now we're going to walk on board. My camera person is going to follow me up here. So then we would do, so that's the cold engine check with the engine not running. Then we're going to, I'm going to put my foot on the brake and I want you to listen for the sound here. We hear that little electric motor kind of sound. We want to hear that. That lets us know that the brake motor is going to operate regardless of whether or not the bus has any power. So we always check that before we start the engine. Then we're going to turn the key. And we're going to wait. There is a light on the dash that you can't see now because it's gone off. There's a light on the dash that says wait to start. We would never start a bus before that light goes out. Once it's gone out, we're going to start the engine. With the engine running, we're going to put our 4-way flashers on. We're going to start our overhead flashing lights, and if you can see in the crossover mirror, you can see there are overheads. The alternating flashing lights, the inside set are running, and then I'm going to hit the door open button. That's going to turn it to the outside set, put our stop arm out here on the side, and our crossing gate out at the front. So now that all of those systems are activated, we're going to go back outside the bus, and we're going to walk all the way around the bus and check lights and tires and various other things. First thing we're going to check is that we have a valid inspection sticker. We do inspections on the buses every 6 months, so this sticker needs to be within the last 6 months. This says that it was checked in May of 2020, so actually this bus has recently had its inspection by the shop. We're just going to make sure everything's secure, our mirrors are good and secure. We'll look at the tire, check our tread level. Look at the outside of the tire, make sure it's in good shape, it's not scuffed or worn down, it's not bulging. Our rim is in good shape. We don't see any bare metal at all on our lug nuts. That would let us know that they're coming loose. And we check and make sure there's no oil from the hub dripping in the hub area. Then we're going to come out. We make sure our crossing gate has come out. Shake hands with the bus. Good morning, Mr. Bus. We're going to stop at the front of the bus and we're going to work our way from top to bottom. We're going to make sure that our clearance lights at the top are on. Our school bus sign is able to be read. Our overhead alternating flashing lights, AFLs, they're on. Our windshield's in good shape. Our wipers are in good shape. The hood is in good shape. There's no damage to the grill. Our headlights are on. Our signal lights, our 4-way flashers are working. We have a license. And we have a valid sticker on that license. Again, make sure our mirrors are secure. Do all the same checks on this tire. I'm not going to walk through it because we don't want to take up too much time. We'll check our mirrors are secure. Make sure our window opens in the winter. This is very important. This track can get filled with ice. You have to be able to open the window at a railway crossing. So you need to make sure that there's no ice in the track that will keep the window from opening. Our stop sign is out and deployed and secure. We're going to check our battery box, make sure that it's secure, make sure that there's no corrosion on any of the terminals, and there's no evidence that the batteries are leaking. This is our fuse box, and we don't tend to check it during a circle check. That's for the shop. Standing at the side of the bus, we're going to look down the side of the bus. We'll make sure all of our clearance lights are on. We're going to make sure our windows are in good condition. We're going to check for this rectangle of reflective tape that goes all the way down the side. We look, make sure our emergency exits have signs on them that are visible from the outside of the bus. And we're going to make sure we have reflectors. So we have a reflector near the front, we have a reflector near the middle. When we get to that reflector near the middle, we're going to bend down, look under the bus. We're going to check the drivetrain on the bus, and we're going to make sure it's got those little U-shaped things underneath of it. That way, if anything happens to the drivetrain, it gets caught in those U-shaped clamps and doesn't hit the pavement. We're going to look at the inside of the back tire on the other side, and we're going to look at the universal joint. And again, we're just looking to make sure it's not dripping or leaking anything, and the inside of those tires look good. When we come down to our back tires, we're going to make sure that there's good clearance. Basically, if you can get a thumbs up above your tire, you've got good clearance on your tires, so your suspension is doing well. We're also going to look for the ends of that leaf spring. Again, we're looking for that happy, smiling bus. We're going to look at the tread on both tires, and we're going to inspect the tire just like we did with the front tire for bulging, wear and tear, damage to the rim, and loose looking lug nuts. We're also going to check for any leaks at the hub. And we're going to check that we have a mud flap, it's in good condition, and it's secure. Required on the rear of the vehicle. Mud flaps are not required on the front, but if they're there, we're going to check them too. But the ones on the rear are important. Our rear reflector and our rear side marker light are on. That's good. We're going to come around to the back. And at the top, we've got our clearance lights. We have our AFLs working. We have our school bus sign, required by law. Do not pass when signals flashing, required by law. Those signs have to be there, as well as our indications of maximum fine in English and in French, and the emergency exit is signed. Our signal lights are working, our tail lights are working. If this light is lit up, it means that the light underneath that shines on the license plate is lit up too. That's also required. This can get dirty, so run a finger along it. When I open the back door, it's going to get very loud because this buzzer is going to go off. It's going to indicate that the back door is open. The backup lights are going to light up. When I open the door, I'm making sure that it opens, that it locks in place, and then I'm going to look in the bus and make sure there's nothing on the floor, no sign that the heaters are leaking, and there's no dangers on the floor inside the bus. So okay, so now that the noise is over, I checked those 3 things or 4 things. My tailpipe looks like it's in good shape. Never put your hands on it, even with your gloves, because it gets very hot and you'll burn yourself. So that's the back of the bus. Also on the back of the bus, we do have a square of reflective tape that we need to make sure it's there. Now I'm going to look up the side of the bus, same as the other side, check the clearance lights, the windows, the exits, the reflective tape, all of the side marker lights and all of the reflectors. I'll go to my fuel tank, make sure the cap is on and secure, that it's nice and tight. I'm going to check these tires again, the same that I did on the other side for the sake of speed. I'm not going to do it. And when we get to our center reflector, we're going to look under the bus, at the inside of the other back tires, and at the exhaust pipe on this side, and make sure that we don't see any evidence of leaks in the exhaust. DEF. It's important to know the difference between your fuel tank and your DEF. DEF is a diesel exhaust fluid. It makes the buses run cleaner. The shop will replenish that for you. You don't have to do that. Just let them know when you're running low. So when the doors are open, we've got a light on this bus. Not all of them have that light there, but if it's there, we want to make sure it's working. And then as we go onto the bus, we're going to make sure that the steps are in good condition, that they're free of ice and snow so that there's no slipping hazard. And we're going to make sure the light is on over the stairs. It lights up so kids can see the stairs in the dark. So I'm going to go up, you'll follow me up, and we'll check out the inside of the bus. So when I come up the stairs, I'm going to make sure I've got a first aid kit. I'm going to make sure its seal is intact. I'm going to make sure that we have a fire extinguisher and that the needle is in the green. Our flares or our reflectors are at the back of this bus, so I'll check them in a minute. I'm going to check all the seats on the bus. Now, each seat is its own little crash compartment, so you need to make sure that the pad in the front and the back is secure at each seat as you walk through the bus. You're going to check every emergency exit. I'm just going to do one, but you'll check all of them. You need to make sure there's a sign. You need to make sure that it opens, and you need to make sure that the alarm sounds. We'll continue on. Same with the roof hatch and all the other emergency exits. And of course, I'm not doing it, but as I move back through the bus, I'm going to check that all of the seats are secure. When I get to the back of the bus, I'm going to make sure again that the emergency exit has a sign. I'm going to stand here for a moment, and I'm going to make sure that I don't smell any exhaust. We don't want any exhaust coming into the bus while it's running, so we want to make sure that that is the seal on the door is good and that it's working and no exhaust is coming in the back of the bus. Something I should have done before I walked back here, I should have put a snow brush between the brake pedal and the driver's seat, kind of jammed it in place there to activate the brake lights. And then what I would have done is I would have opened the door and made sure the brake lights are lit up. There are 4 tail lights and brake lights on these buses. You need to have at least one working. If they're all burnt out, then you cannot take the bus out onto the road. You need to get the brake lights fixed. So that said, I'm going to work my way back to the front of the bus, and as I do so, I'm just going to check that each seat bottom is secure. And I would do that for every seat as I work my way back up the bus, because we want to make sure that those seat bottoms aren't going to flip up if the bus stops suddenly. So once I've done all of those checks of the seats and the windows and the rear door, then I get to come into the captain's seat here and I get to check all of the buttons and switches here. So just starting kind of working from left to right, I have my air fresh and recirculated air, my heat to the defroster, the driver, the air temperature dials. I can, if it is bus in an area where strobe lights are required, I can turn my strobe light on and off. I can turn the driver dome light on and off, make sure I check that, make sure I check all the lights in the interior. I'm going to check, we have a heated mirror, so in the wintertime you turn that on. We're going to check our heaters. Each time you turn on a fan or a heater, listen for the sound of it working so that you know that they're all working. And these fans here can be moved and repositioned for your comfort or to have additional fans blowing on the window in the wintertime. I will check all of my gauges, make sure everything is operating within the normal range. I'm going to turn off my 4-way flashers. I'll do a right signal light and just make sure that it's lighting up on the outside of the bus. I can see it in the crossover mirrors. A left signal light, and so our signals all work. I'm going to hold down the window washer fluid button. Make sure that it is spraying, fluid is coming out on both windows, and that both wipers are actually clearing the windows. They're not smearing, and they're in good contact with the surface. Other things that I'm going to check while I'm here in this seat is I'm going to make sure that our brakes are functioning, that the transmission is functioning. So because the bus is going to move, I'm required by law to put on my seatbelt. Even though I'm only going to move the bus like a meter or 2 meters, the bus is moving, your seatbelt is required. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the parking brake. If you look here, we'll see if the camera can get in. Reverse, neutral, drive, 4th, 2nd, and 1st gear. There is no parking gear. The buses are parked by putting them in neutral and securing the parking brake. So to make sure that parking brake is holding, I'm actually going to put the bus in drive right now. The bus is not moving. That means that the parking brake is working. I can double check that by putting the bus in reverse for a moment. And again, the bus doesn't move, so that means my parking brake is holding. Now, I'm going to release the parking brake, so I put my foot on the service brake and release the parking brake handle. Now, if I put the bus in drive and give it a little bit of gas, there we go. This bus has been sitting for a while, folks. Okay, so it goes forward. Now I'm going to put it in reverse. Before I put it in reverse, I'm going to honk the horn twice to let everybody know what I'm doing, turn my 4-way flashers on, put the bus in reverse, and just take it back to where it started. So now I know the bus will go into drive, it will go into reverse, and the parking brake works and will hold the bus in position. So when I've done all of that, I'm going to test my radio. Typically what we would do is when we're underway, we would radio base with our route number and let them know that we're in service. Sometimes we'll use the code 10-8, and 10-8 means that we are in service. So for me, I might go Route 109 is 10-8, and I would let go of the button, put the mic back on the clip, and base would respond, thank you, good morning, Route 109, or whatever they might want to say to me. So once we've checked all of our systems and everything else in the bus, the last thing that we're going to do, I'm not sure if it's up here or if it's in the pocket on the, or in the glove compartment on this bus. Looks like it's in the glove compartment. We're going to check our paperwork. So we're going to go to the disco. D. I'm going to make sure my driver's license is here and that it's current and that it's all good and legal. I'm going to look for the insurance slip. Here's our insurance slip. DIS is our safety sticker. I checked that on the exterior of the bus. We actually have the piece of paper that goes with it. C is CVOR. CVOR, our commercial vehicle operator's registration. So that's here. And then there's O, our ownership, which we have a copy of the front and the back. So now that I've gone to the disco and I've completed my circle check, then I can take the logbook and flip to today's date, which is the 3rd of June. Today in particular, I would write my name, I would print my name, sign my signature, put the full address of where I did the inspection, what the current odometer reading is, and what the current time is. We're not going to round up or round down that time. If it happens to be 7:03 a.m., you will write 7:03 in there. If you were the second driver to drive this bus in a day, you would put your signature over here in this column for the second driver. And then once all of that is complete and you are certain that your bus is ready to go, your mirrors are all set up so that you can see things, and everything is ready for you to proceed, then you can finally proceed. But you don't do so until you have filled out your logbook and signed off that you have completed your circle check. And that's a quick introduction, or as quick as I can, introduction to circle checks. You'll have lots of fun learning how to do them when you are behind the wheel with your behind the wheel training. Thanks for joining me out here, and thank you to my camera person, Melissa.
Bye.